So welcome back. I'm going to take you guys through how I replaced the Empennage fairing on the RV8. You can see the old one here didn't fit very well on both sides. I think the root cause really is it's made out of fiberglass and it was just a bit too thin, so it caused it to bow a little bit between the fasteners. I was going to fix it, but I thought, you know what? We could all learn something from how to make these from scratch, and I'll be much happier with the product, and we'll make it out of carbon fiber. So let me show you how we did it. So taking the old fairing off, there's that flange that you saw in the previous video, which is why we created it, to get this fairing on and off. So that's one of the things I wanted to really change up on this fairing. It's just the way that I made it fit to the fuselage. It wraps around the front of the horizontal stab, which is really not ideal. Getting it on and off with a painted airplane is definitely going to be challenging. So that's the old one with the flange that you see. All the gray stuff you see is the original part. So of course this is a fastback, so the whole front had to be done custom anyways. So while we're at it, I'm going to take the bottom flange off, and we're going to fiberglass that area too. So it'll be fiberglass all the way around. We'll replace all these parts with fiberglass, one layer of that, and 3 layers of carbon fiber. And I actually like the contour that came up with on the front, so I'm just going to trace that back onto the fuselage so I can copy that onto the first one. But you see how it wrapped around the front of the horizontal stab there, which is really not happy. And I'm going to mark 5/8 of an inch, and the faster way to do it, as you see here, is to use one of these little marker tools. 5/8 of an inch from the edge of the horizontal stab and the vertical stab. And on the front of the vertical stab, we'll make it curved a little bit. So I just mark 2 inches up from the turtle deck on the fuselage there, and then use the reference on the vertical stab spar. And we'll just visually create a curved line with the 3M tape that you see here. This is an 1/8 inch wide 3M fine line tape. Really useful for creating curved surfaces. Probably saw that from the intersection fairing video. And just trying to get a visually pleasing curve out of it. If you're not happy with it, redo it. And it is going to be a little bit different on the front, so I'm just marking 1 inch forward of the horizontal stab there, and then it'll be a straight line tangential to that curve you see there. I'm just going to mark that. See what that ends up being. In this case, 2 5/8, so that I can replicate that on the other side and make sure that's going to look the same on the left and the right. So the fairing is going to come down, it's going to follow that straight line, and it's going to split horizontally. So you can take the top fairing off and the bottom fairing off without really scuffing the paint so much. It's hard to wrap it around the front of the horizontal stab and get a nice fit. I think it looks better this way anyways. And the 3M tape again to outline where you want the fairing to end up. Alright, so now we're back into masking everything off, and of course we don't want foam or any buildup inside where the vertical stab attaches to the fuselage. So we're going to tape everything off. In this case, packing tape for the front part there. And then the turtle deck here, I use some, this is Gorilla tape, so it's a bit stronger, just to create a bridge across there so there's no foam or anything getting inside there. So you want to use some stronger tape. Make sure it doesn't cover the 1/8 inch tape that you laid down, because then that's going to mess up the dimensions of your fairing a little bit. And this is some foam that's typically used for planting fake flowers, I think. But it's quite useful, just filling in voids. We don't want to foam that whole area, obviously, that'd be a lot. So this stuff cuts easily. And just tape it in place with some Gorilla tape. And then you don't have to use as much foam. After that, we'll finish masking off everything to get a nice tight seal. In the back here, it can get a little bit challenging, so we'll use some of that green foam again, some Gorilla tape to keep it all in place, and then we'll mask it afterwards. So now we're ready from foam, got everything protected, so now we can build up the shape of our fairing. Here's the same foam that we use on the intersection fairing. It's a LePage brand. It's the white stuff. I commented on the previous video that I like this stuff better because it carves better and you can make it a bit thicker. The yellow stuff tends to be wet in the middle still after a few days if you put it on too thick. However, I did learn on this project that if you do this stuff too thick, it will be wet in the middle as well. So you'll see here we'll put one layer of the LePage white foam. And this second layer here, I did way too early. So let the thing dry for a day. You could probably even carve some of it and then add that second layer later. So I ended up with some wet spots inside. Here's all the tools we're gonna use, some coarse files. And bandsaw blades or bendable blades are really nice as well. So we can start really coarse. Obviously, we need to remove a lot here. It's a dirty job, but it's fairly simple. And just like we said in the intersection fairing video, we want to carve this down all the way until we can see that 1/8" fine line tape, which is where we want the fairing to end. So we definitely want to be flat against the fuselage at that reference point. So I really like using these saws because you can bend them any direction. So it just takes some patience to get what you want. I found this kind of useful as well. This is like a body sander for a vehicle. It's very, very coarse, so be cautious when you get close down to the fuselage. But this is the best tool once you're near where you want to go. It's just a coarse file, and it's a very aggressive file. There's no need to get any finer than that. And just finish it off with some coarse sandpaper. Clean it all up. Now it's not going to look super pretty when you're all done, but as long as we got that 1/8" line exposed and you're happy with the contour, then we'll go and cover the whole thing in aluminum tape so that when we wax this up, we got a nice strong back to fiberglass against. And depending on the contour in the front here, it gets a little complicated. You might have to cut the aluminum tape into smaller, thinner strips to cover some of these areas. And that's what it should all look like when you're ready to go, starting to fiberglass. So we're going to put one layer of fiberglass, just going to use the old fairing to kind of get a basic shape. Obviously we can't trace all of it because it's going to be a little bit different at the bottom, especially on the right side there. But just to get a basic idea, now we are going to start with fiberglass here just to prevent any kind of corrosion issues between carbon fiber and aluminum. Even though the aircraft is going to be painted, we'll start with one layer of fiberglass. And just trimming around the back of the horizontal stab there so that it falls vertically behind the vertical stab cover area. We'll wax it all up. So there's the old fairing. So we're going to put one layer of fiberglass on each side. Then we're going to put another layer on the front, and then we're going to double that with some carbon fiber. So the beauty of using this carbon fiber, it's not a structural thing. Obviously, we're not really looking for rigidity per se. However, when you use carbon fiber, it is going to be rigid once you do a single layer of fiberglass and a single layer of carbon fiber. What that allows you to do is to then take the fairing off, and if you want to add another layer of carbon fiber, you can do it off the airplane. So let's get all the peel ply ready. Got all the supplies cut, of course, because once we start fiberglassing, it's going to get messy. Same West System epoxy. Now we're mixing this for fiberglass. We can do it on the workbench like you can see here because the fiberglass is quite tightly wound. So you can spread the epoxy on it and it's not gonna come apart. You could pick that up, which is obviously what we're gonna do, and put it on the plane. You can't do that with carbon fiber because it's very loosely wound. You need to use a plastic backing, or you need to wet the surface on the aircraft and then put the carbon fiber on dry and then wet it when it's on the aircraft. If you pick it up from the table, it's just gonna disintegrate in your hands. We'll just use a little squeegee to get it all flush. One layer on the left, one layer on the right, one on the front, and then we're ready to put carbon fiber on. You might have to trim it in certain places just to get a nice fit. So here we're putting the carbon fiber. We actually put it on dry. There's quite a bit of epoxy underneath it though. So no need to worry about impregnating this. It's going to be have plenty of epoxy to cure properly. Made it obviously big, so we'll just trim it on the aircraft. Every time you do fiberglass, you got to sacrifice a pair of scissors. So here's how we wet the carbon fiber. Just using a little squeegee and the same West System epoxy, and making sure you're working it on there so it's nice and wet. The other way you could do it is use the plastic backing for the carbon fiber and then lay it up wet also. Again, trimming along the back where the elevator starts so we can get the carbon fiber to sit nice and flush against our mold. So working the epoxy in, and like I said, the advantage of this really is we have one layer of fiberglass and one layer of carbon fiber, although we have two in the front now. I can pop this off the airplane. It is very rigid because it's carbon fiber. So then I can put it on the workbench, and then we added 2 layers of carbon fiber onto the top of it. Now putting the peel ply, so let's talk about this for a second. Advantages of peel ply, obviously way less sanding. It's gonna be nice and smooth when it comes apart, but it is a lighter, stronger part, so it's gonna get rid of all the epoxy buildups. Much less mess, so there's going to be less drips down the side of the fuselage. You can write on it like I'll show you later, and it actually works as kind of a squeegee and fills voids. So if you have a void in a fiberglass area and you add fiberglass to it, put a little thing of peel ply over top of it, once that's dry and you peel it off, you hardly even tell that you repaired it. So I use this on every single fiberglass work that I do on the aircraft, just because for the most part, way less sanding, and it just makes it so much neater. So in this case here, when we're putting the carbon fiber on the fuselage, there's going to be drips going down the side of the fuselage, and this peel ply just absorbs all of it. So that's what it should look like. Some nice small pieces in the area where the curves get a little too much for the big peel ply pieces. Rip it all off. So now we're gonna have to trim this. So the advantage again of peel ply is that I can write on this. So we'll put some masking tape on this later and reference cut line, and we'll be able to easily see it. Wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't use peel ply. And just popping it off, a little bit of air pressure, and this little steel tool. It's really rigid because of the carbon fiber, and it should just pop off since we waxed everything. So I rough trim it with just some shears. You could use a Dremel tool, but there's no need to make extra dust mess when you're doing this. You can see the kids run in the background as well. And we're done with all the mold stuff, so we can pull that off and get it out of the way. Now, like I saw on the intersection fairing one, that 1/8 inch tape, we might not be able to see it because we're using carbon fiber, which is black, of course. So we're just gonna use some masking tape to reference where that ended up. The masking tape's exactly 15/16 of an inch width. So we'll just cut pieces of it and mark where that masking tape ended up. And then we'll put the fairing back on and mark it. So the fairing back on, we can see the masking tape. We could measure 15/16, but the easier way, of course, is to just lay some more masking tape on top, line up the edges. Now you have a straight edge, which you can then just trace with a Sharpie. So we're going to trace this, take it back to the workbench, cut it a little bit, And then we're going to add 2 more layers of carbon fiber on the workbench. And the reason we're doing it on the workbench, like I said, is because this is super rigid already and it's not going to move. If this was 2 layers of fiberglass, we wouldn't be able to get away with that. We'd have to do the layups on the fuselage. You might have to Dremel in the areas where you get the curved surface at the front around the horizontal stab leading edge. Just getting the curvature in the front. Obviously we can't see the tape yet, so we know we can take off 15/16 of an inch right away. But then once we got it exposed, we'll just go ahead and use a ruler. Measure 15/16 all the way around. Use some fine line tape to make it nice and contoured where we're happy, and then outline that with a pen and cut it out. So just using a sanding block, and then we'll switch to some 50 grit emery cloth just to get it kind of the basic shape before we add that extra 2 layers of carbon fiber, which we're going to do on the workbench. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. This is going to be part 1. Part 2 is going to be finishing up, filling in, and creating the bottom intersection fairing. So just as we end the video here, the goal before Oshkosh 2020 is to get 1,000 subscribers. So we're about a third of our way there, so tell your friends. I hope you guys subscribe to the channel and support it so we can get some support going for the channel. There's going to be some great videos coming up. We have 1 month from today before we leave to get the airplane painted in Alabama. So we're going to document that whole thing, make videos the way down, the painting and everything. It's going to be awesome. Stuff's off getting airbrushed right now, so that's going to be super exciting getting those videos done. And we just hope we can start to build and ask support for this channel. So build yourself something, take it for a rip, subscribe.